Believe it or not, the choice of song today has nothing to do with the milder weather that's on the way. The choice of song today is in honor and loving memory of David Johansen, the last surviving member of the 1970s glam and proto-punk band, the New York Dolls, who passed away Friday at the age of 75. It was revealed earlier this year that Johansen had stage 4 cancer and a brain tumor. The New York Dolls were forerunners of punk and the band's style with the teased hair, the interesting clothing choices, lots of makeup. That inspired the glam movement that took up residence in heavy metal as well decades later in bands like Faster Pussycat and Motley Crue. Now, in the 1980s, Johansen assumed the persona of Buster Poindexter, a lounge lizard who had the hit Hot, Hot, Hot in 1987. You might remember Johansen best from his roles on film, including Candy Mountain, Let It Ride, Married to the Mob, and perhaps most memorable, The Ghost of Christmas Past in the Bill Murray hit Scrooged. Remember the taxi driver? That was David Johansen, who passed away on Friday at the age of 75. It is Monday morning. We are into March. This is the third day of the month of March, and hope springs eternal with milder weather on the way. We've got lots to talk about today, and I want to get right down to it because I got a call at the end of the show on Friday that left me frustrated all weekend long.
I was just curious about that question you said yesterday, or that story you had about the injuries.
Yeah.
That you were going to tell today.
Oh my gosh, I did say something like that, didn't I, Jay? And I told you I was going to tell you today during the Talkback Hour. Yeah. And then I got busy, and what was it going to? Oh my gosh, I'm such a moron. Jay, you are so right. It was an injury?
Yeah, it was one of those stupid injuries.
I remember saying I was going to save it for today. I need to write stuff down. I'm trying to remember my really stupid injury now, besides injuring my shoulder while I slept. And I would tell the story. I promise you I would, Jay, but I am completely... Oh, man, I really owe you one, buddy. I owe all 44 of you one, the 44 listeners of this show. I can't for the life of me remember, Jay.
That's okay.
No, it's not. I just broke one of the cardinal rules of radio. You have to deliver on your promises. I'm sorry. I'm completely at a loss. Fortunately, every show gets recorded, and I was able to go back and piece it all together. I'm still a moron, and I'm very sorry for breaking my commitment to you. It's a complete screw-up. I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope that you'll also be with us at the beginning of Rant or Rave today. Our Talkback Hour starting at noon. I'll get it all sorted out, including the story that I promised to tell on Friday that I will share just after noon today when we start our Talkback Hour, okay? Man, oh man, when I screw up big. Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, outside workers with QP Local 1656 in the region are on strike. The region says the strike means waste management centers in Cambridge and Waterloo will be closed to residential and commercial customers. For the time being, regional services, including flights out of the regional airport, continue as scheduled. I've got just 2 quick thoughts on this when it comes to the strike that just started. Number 1, we've heard from the union that there was an offer one day with more money that was gone the next day. So there was less money after that first offer of more money. Why didn't you take the offer with the more money? Like, why did it get taken off the table? Why didn't you take it when it was offered to you? I'm curious about that. And the other thing I remain curious about, and I mentioned this last week, I'm not so sure. I want to support the collective bargaining process, but when your job action impacts hundreds of thousands of residents of a community, I'm not sure striking is something that should be allowed. Essential services, civil servants, maybe. Number 2, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, local hockey players making news. this weekend. Kitchener Rangers forward Trent Swick has signed a contract with the NHL's Las Vegas Golden Knights, and he's joined by former Guelph Storm Braden Bowman, who just also signed with Vegas and happens to be a native of Kitchener. So Braden Bowman, the Kitchener native, joins fellow Kitchener kids Nick Hague, Tanner Pearson, and Cole Schwint with the Golden Knights. I might have to start cheering for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, a Canadian is part of the team that won the Best Picture Oscar for Honora. Vancouver's Samantha Kwan is a producer on the sex worker dramedy by American director Sean Baker. The film reigned supreme last night, leading all films with 5 wins, including for Best Original Screenplay, Directing, Editing, and Best Lead Actress for Mikey Madison. Adrian Brody won Best Actor for his performance in The Brutalist, while Kieran Culkin won Best Supporting Actor for A Real Pain, and Zoe Saldana won Best Supporting Actress for Amelia Perez. Number 4, Canada is bracing to see whether U.S. President Donald Trump follows through tomorrow on his threats of economy-wide tariffs. Trump agreed to pause until March 4th an executive order to implement 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods with a lower levy on energy. Another last-minute pause could avert a North American trade war. Canadian officials have been in Washington over the past several weeks trying to stop the tariffs through diplomacy, and Ottawa even beefed up border security. We'll talk about the impact tariffs could have on our food bank of Waterloo Region at 10:30 this morning. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this Monday morning, the Leafs won their 5th in a row, topping Pittsburgh 6-5 yesterday. And when the Leafs win, Austin Matthews often scores, allowing us the chance for a little AM on AM in the AM.
The puck comes back and they score! Matthews in front of the net.
Matthews now has 700 points, with Toronto the fastest Leaf ever to reach that milestone. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. I remember getting an email on Friday before the show was done, just after we heard U.S. President Donald Trump refer to Liberal leadership contender Chrystia Freeland as a, quote, whack, and Trump also describing Pierre Poilievre as not a MAGA guy, which if I'm Pierre Poilievre, I'm probably happy to be described as. Nonetheless, the email I received from Donna said, you should ask your 44 listeners, if they wanted to call Donald Trump a name, what would that name be? And that was just when whack and not a MAGA guy were out there. After we got off the show on Friday, I don't know what that was in the Oval Office, but it certainly wasn't world leaders acting in statesman-like ways, was it? The president of Ukraine is ungrateful. He should be, down on his knees thanking the United States and its president, Donald Trump? What name would you call the president of the United States? And we'll get the audio from the Oval Office coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So let me get this straight. The president of Ukraine comes to Washington to sign a deal that would help bring about a ceasefire in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Remember, after Russia invaded Ukraine, and Volodymyr Zelensky is there in the Oval Office to work out that deal, and all of a sudden, Vice President J.D. Vance interjects, and things go from bad to worse in Washington.
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From
yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What are you
You're
speaking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with all
backed
respect to
you
your
far
answer.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of
what are you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Have you said thank you once? You should be so grateful. I have look, 47 more months. 47. This is only a month in. Canada's national newspaper, if you were keeping track over the weekend, and the columnist Andrew Coyne referred to Donald Trump as both a madman and a moron. Bully for sure. How about felonious Trump? Would that be a suitable name for the president of the United States? I am struggling to understand who it is that our friends south of the border elected. Let's go to the phones and hear from you. Jersey Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Well, it's right there in his name. Just call him the Don.
That, you know what? There is a sense of mafia and thuggery surrounding him. That's true.
And of course, rather than commander-in-chief, being that he's willing to make all these concessions to a Russian dictator, directed democracy to the side, just call him the appeaser-in-chief. As I wrote in a comment to somebody else, when I tried to make some reason to MAGA supporters, I said, he's Neville Chamberlain without the pleasing personality.
Another way to look at it. Jersey Bill, appreciate your call and your thoughts on this as somebody who obviously continues to hold dual citizenship in your home country of the United States. Must be one that confuses and confounds these days. It is difficult to understand. I just think back on leaders from generations past and how they spoke to one another, how they handled important and delicate meetings, and what we saw in the Oval Office on Friday, some of which you just heard. This was about a 50-minute conversation that devolved in the final 10 minutes or so into what you just heard. How dare the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, not be so grateful to the United States that is going to find a way to broker a deal, which will get the United States some critical minerals, by the way, and also, I guess, stop temporarily the invasion that Russia has brought into Ukraine, because as Zelensky pointed out in that meeting, Vladimir Putin in the past has signed ceasefire agreements that he did not honor. And this is what we're getting from the White House. As I said, 47 more months. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Nathan suggests a good name for the President of the United States is Kim Jong-un, the Tangerine Tyrant, or Mega Mussolini. And Clive, by email to Mike at 570news.com. If Trump would have spoken his second language, or if Zelensky would have spoken his second language, Russian, Trump may have understood. I see what you did there, Clive. I see what you did there. Let's go back to the phones. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Great show. Listened to you all winter, buried in the snow. Mike, Trump is a disgrace to all conservative people, conservative parties, and everything. It's just unbelievable. Eh? He's a problem. They should change his medication. That stuff he's on is not working, and Mussolini is a good name for him.
All right, Charlie, I appreciate the phone call from up in Grey Highlands today. I was up that way on the weekend, of course, because the Rangers played the Owen Sound Attack up in Grey County on Saturday, and Charlie ain't kidding about being buried by snow. Forget the 93 centimeters we got here in the region in February. They got about twice as much up there. Incredible amounts of snow. But I like where Charlie is coming from when he says that Donald Trump is an embarrassment to conservatives. Yes, the Republican Party is the right of center politically in the United States. And what Donald Trump is, I don't think even reflects right of center. I'm not sure Donald Trump can see the center. I'm not sure Donald Trump sees anything but himself. He might as well walk around with a mirror all the time because he is so engrossed in his own self. But again, 47 more months. I am astounded, absolutely astounded at what we have borne witness to in just the last 30 days or so since his inauguration. We'll explore this further on the show tomorrow when we get the chance to have a guest on to give us some perspective on it. Right now, we're going to send you to the 570 News Center for an update, and then looking for some perspective or some understanding of what's with the speed limits on Lobsinger Line from 80 to 60 to 40 in basically the blink of an eye. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Just to give you an idea of what it is we're talking about when we talk about the inconsistency of new speed limits, enforced, by the way, by the municipal speed camera program on Lobsinger Line. Just imagine you're hanging the left from King Street onto Lobsinger Line where it begins. So you're out in North Waterloo, almost into St. Jacobs along King Street. You're making that left on Lobsinger, and the limit's going to be 80 for the blink of an eye before it drops to 60 for another blink of an eye, before it drops down as far as 40 because of a school zone. And that is a whole lot of speed change in a very short distance. Sandy Shantz is the mayor of Woolwich Township and joins us for a conversation. Mayor Shantz, good morning.
Good morning to you.
What have you been hearing from folks by way of concern with these new speed limits on Lobsinger Line?
Yeah. First of all, I think, and I haven't driven it in the last few days, but hopefully that the 80, 60, 40 has been resolved and it's 60 right from King Street. That's what I understood was going to happen right from the start. So I just want to say that if that's not true, then my apologies. I'll go drive it and double check. What have I been hearing? People are frustrated, and as you said, short period from 80 down to 60, down to 40, up to 60, and back to 80 is very difficult, and honestly doesn't make much sense.
It was also inconsistent, wasn't it, Mayor Shantz, with other school zones in the township?
So this is regional, and our take isn't always the same as the regional take. So what they've done, and I've talked to Commissioner Spooner about it, is they've really applied an urban strategy in a rural area, and I've had a couple of conversations on that issue with staff. If you're in the city and you're going 50 and you drop to 40, that makes sense. So from my point of view, what we're trying to do is get drivers to pay attention, and so I think any change in speed should make drivers pay attention. And that's what we want in the school zone, particularly in the urban areas where you've got lots of kids crossing the street, parents crossing the street. There's a whole lot of activity around the urban schools. I think the rural schools are different. I think our rural students are just as important as our urban students, and so we do need to have a way to ensure that they're safe as well. But I think that the rural roads should be different from the urban roads, just in general.
I should have taken a trip out to the Heidelberg Tavern on the weekend just to check for myself if the 40 is still there. But I think
the 40 is still there. It's the 80 at King
right.
Street.
So from 60 down to 40 instead of 80 to 60 to 40.
Yeah.
That's right. So when you talk about the school zones on those rural roads in the townships being treated differently than those school zones in urban areas, should it be 40 or should it be 50 in those areas then, in your opinion?
I think there needs to be a reduction in speed just to sort of twig drivers to say, I need to pay attention here. There's, there could be kids, there could be whatever happening. So I think there needs to be a reduction. I think that the traffic engineers would tell you it needs to be, I guess it doesn't need to be 20 kilometers. That's a good point. I'd heard that 20 kilometers is sort of a good thing. So 80 to 60, I think, is reasonable on the rural roads, and perhaps there are some that should be different from that. I don't think one size fits all. Is
Lobsinger going to go back up to 80 once we get beyond St. Clements, then out towards Cross Hill?
It's 80 beyond Three Bridges, somewhere beyond Three Bridges Road, so around Martin's Apple.
Okay.
So it'll be 80. It won't be 60 all the way.
Gotcha. So 60 until Martin's Apples, then you get to 80, and then we're slowing down in the school zones again.
Yep.
Which goes through town regardless. And like once you get to Heidelberg,
there's a drop.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned at the outset, Mayor Shantz, this is a regional road, a regional issue. That's where this enforcement is coming from, which I totally understand. But when it came to the automated speed enforcement and the speed cameras, we know that the city of Kitchener as a council has pushed back against the region in this regard. Is council in Woolwich Township considering doing the same?
We haven't taken a position on that. I do believe that on the regional roads, they will still apply. So that would be confusing for people in Kitchener, I imagine, because the regional schools on regional roads will still have the cameras, but schools on city roads will not, is how I understand that.
Which I think if we're having trouble understanding this at the council level, I can only imagine how difficult this is for residents. Is there a way to make this easier to understand so that we get some kind of consistency around the region?
Well, I that's a good question. I know traffic lights are run by the region so that there's consistency along the traffic lights and traffic can keep moving. I think that just like there's a difference between urban and rural, I wouldn't want to have one policy for everything. And so, if Kitchener has a different strategy for traffic calming, which is really what this is, then I would say that's okay for them to have. There's all different pieces to traffic calming. This is one of them. Kitchener uses a lot of speed humps, I think, in a lot of their areas, and other places do not. We haven't really used those to date.
Are you comfortable with the way Lobsinger Line is right now, starting at 60 at King and then going up to 80 and then slowing down through Heidelberg and St. Clements before picking up again?
I can live with it. I understand the narrative about slowing down in that particular school, but I think I can live with that if it starts at 60 from King Street and up to just past Three Bridges Road. It's you should be slowing down coming to the intersection anyway, and so with the school zone, it's something I can live with. It wouldn't have been my first choice of a place to put a camera. But that's my own opinion.
It sounds like this is the compromise that comes with municipal politics in this region, Mayor Shantz.
You nailed it.
I appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sandy Shantz is the mayor of Woolwich Township. She can live with it, she says. I'll tell you what, and this is not me saying that Mayor Shantz is doing a poor job. It probably is me saying she's more diplomatic than I am. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, okay? And if you want to make your municipal speed camera program look like a cash grab, this is the perfect way to do it. Good job, Region of Waterloo. Proud of you on this one. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I can live with it. I understand the narrative about slowing down in that particular school, but I think I can live with that if it starts at 60 from King Street and up to just past Three Bridges Road. It's you should be slowing down coming to the intersection anyway. And so with the school zone, it's something I can live with. It wouldn't have been my first choice of a place to put a camera. That's my own opinion.
I absolutely want us to slow down. That's Woolwich Township Mayor Sandy Shantz. We all want this, right? And I told you last week the report that had been prepared for Waterloo Council that showed on streets where they had reduced speed limits on average. Speeds that drivers were driving at were reduced by about 5 kilometers per hour. We all want people to drive slower. There's no question about it. But as we try to roll out this utterly preposterous, in my opinion, speed camera program, 175 speed cameras in this region by 2028. I still don't believe there's a snowball's chance in Hades that's ever going to happen. But we are increasing as of last month, February, because we just moved into March. As of last month, we've installed more speed cameras in more areas around the region. One of these on Lobsinger Line, where you can find widely varied speed limits from 60 to 80 to 40 if there's a school zone there. It's just, it makes it look like you're trying to catch people with the speed camera and issue tickets to them. Drivers, be aware of your surroundings. Watch for those signs and the speed limits that change. But you can go to other parts of Woolwich or Wellesley Township and find school zones where the limit's 50 instead of 40. And anyway, I find this really frustrating. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach for a region as diverse and dynamic, not to mention widespread, as ours. And here we're trying to, fit a square peg into a round hole. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. My buddy Ogie, good morning.
Good morning, sir. And I agree with a bit with the mayor. I understand people should be slowing down. The problem isn't that. The problem we have 4 schools, 3 Mennonite schools, and the school at the church right by across from Martin's Apples there. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, the apple orchard.
No, that's okay. We like Martins. We're going to do
fair enough. There's 4, and there's 3 different speed zones. That road is. I live on Lobsinger Line in Heidelberg, so I drive that every day.
So when you drive that, give me the speed limits that you're driving every day. How does this work?
Okay, well, we're leaving from our house going to Waterloo. Now it does drop to it says 60, and then it says it says speed enforcement camera, but that sign is behind where it's already dropped to 40, which I find really funny too. But it's about 50 yards behind that sign.
You're leaving Heidelberg.
That sign, you're oh yeah, the camera's here.
You're leaving Heidelberg though. Hang on, Ogie. I want to make sure I'm straight on this. So you're leaving Heidelberg. You're traveling 60.
When we leave Heidelberg, it's 50 in the town of Heidelberg.
Yeah.
It does go to 80 when we get to the bottom of the hill by that strawberry farm that's there.
Yeah.
It does go to 80, and it drops to 60 just past the orchard or before that school and the orchard. It drops to 60 and then to 40, and that's within half a kilometer.
50, 80, 60, 40, all on one road.
And then it goes back up to 60 once you get by the school. And then you get to the corner.
Yeah.
And when you're coming toward, when you turn at Wagner's Corner.
I got you. Yep.
You turn there. And this is just the one school. The 80 is gone. They've taken the 80 sign down a week ago. So it does go to 60 when you turn the corner. But the problem is the trucks aren't used to that yet. And we almost rear-ended, I don't know how many times, due to not everybody realizing it's not 80 there anymore.
Yeah, but I'm still thinking.
But
you leave Heidelberg. It's 50 in the village of Heidelberg. You get up to 80 when you're on Lobsinger. Yes. Then you're down to 60. Then you're down to 40. Then you're back up to 60.
Yeah, which is not very long. 500 yards from the corner, and it's the same coming back now.
And Heidelberg down to King. Lobsinger from Heidelberg down to King at Wagner's Corners is what? Like maybe 2 kilometers?
It's about 6 to 7 kilometers, give or take.
Yeah, I guess it goes fast when you're driving 80. Anyway, that's a whole lot of change in a very short period of time.
And there's 3 Mennonite schools. There's one just south of Heidelberg on Kressler.
Yeah.
And there's another one by the Orchard. And there's another one on 3 bridges between Hawksville Road and Listowel Road. There's 3 different speed limits around all these schools.
That's
and the thing we don't understand, the slowest speed limit is by the school to church, which I never seen anybody walking to. The Mennonite schools, it should be slower there than it is at that school. It's the thing I don't understand, because a lot of Mennonite kids walk to school, and that's the part that's even more confusing.
All right, Ogie. I appreciate hearing from you and trying to make sense of something that's very difficult to make sense of. Hess, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike. I also drive that road every day, and I agree with Ogie that there's never any kids around that school. Here's my point. To ticket somebody Sunday night at 10 p.m., automatically ticket them when there's absolutely no kids, no school around, nothing but a cash grab, buddy. That's all that is.
Agreed with you wholeheartedly, Hess. I've said this about the traffic cameras, the speed cameras in the cities as well. Just put up the flashing light on them. I've seen this in many jurisdictions, mostly American, some Canadian though too. Just put up flashing lights, and when the lights are flashing, the amber lights are flashing, that means that the school zone speed limit is in effect. And make it from 7 in the morning till, I don't care if you go 7 to 7, but on Sunday afternoon or on Christmas Day or in the middle of July, if you're giving me a ticket for exceeding the school zone speed limit when there's no school in session, you are grabbing my cash. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our 10 a.m. update, let's quickly get back to the phones. Jerry, I got about 45 seconds.
Okay, that's all I need.
Okay.
These school zones. You go down Highway 8 past Rockwood. There's Rockwood Public School. They have a sign that says 60 when lights are flashing. The lights are only flashing when kids are coming or going, maybe at noon hour as well, I don't know. No wiring to do because they're powered by solar panels. What could be easier than that? And the flashing lights draw more attention than a simple speed zone change sign.
Jerry, you're spot on. And so why can't we be more like Hamilton, Flamborough, whatever that is on the way to Rockton? It's just outside of the region of Waterloo. If they can do it there, we can do it here. There's also, by the way, a petition that's been put together that will be brought to Woolwich Township Council. The petition closes on March the 6th, and then that's to change the speed limit and speed camera enforcement on Lobsinger Line. We'll see what comes of that. Good conversation to start the day here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, as you probably know by now, the interim tag has been removed. No, not for a coach in sports, but for the director of the public school board here in the region. Scott Miller became the interim director after Jiwan Chanaka was dismissed, and now Scott Miller is the new director of education with our Waterloo Region District School Board, the public board here in the region. And Scott makes time for our show this morning. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Just by way of background, for those that may not fully understand the role of a director and the relationship with the Board of Trustees that we elect during municipal elections, can you kind of explain that to us so we understand the relationship better and what a director actually does?
Certainly, I sure can. So the Director of Education is the Board of Trustees' sole employee in the organization. So in my case, they are my supervisors and an answer to them. In addition, the role of the director, I oversee and have oversight of all of our schools and all the work that we do within the schools around student achievement and well-being. And in addition to that, to all the fiduciary responsibilities, so human resources, finance, all of our facility work, health and safety. So really, I'd say the CEO of the organization with oversight of everything, and then certainly staff who go about and do that daily work.
You grew up as a student coming through the Waterloo Region District School Board. How does it feel for you now as an alum to be that board's director of education?
Thank you. It's a real sense of pride, Mike. I personally and professionally, the Waterloo Region District School Board has meant so much to me. I was actually at Forest Heights Collegiate on Friday, which is the high school I graduated from, and going around that school and visiting a number of classrooms. So it is a real sense of pride, and I would say it's certainly a privilege and an honor to be in the role that I'm in now.
And just to be clear, I may have glossed over a whole bunch there. It's not like you walked out of Forest Heights and into the role as Director of Education with WRDSB. You've held several different roles within the board over the years. What experiences do you lean on, Scott, as you now assume the title of director?
Sure. I think just what you said, just all of those experiences. I had the privilege of teaching in both the secondary and elementary panels. I've been a superintendent with responsibilities for special education for 10 years, which really allowed me to work with really all the schools. And in addition to many community partners, many parents, many families who really have informed my vision and my belief as I continue to grow in these roles. And more recently with the associate director roles, I had oversight for schools for a period of time. And then leading up to the director role, I was had oversight of all of our operations. So I really have held so many positions within the board and built so many relationships both within the organization and within the community that really feel that there's a lot of resources that I can lean on that support me in this leadership role.
What do you hope to accomplish, Scott, as the Director of Education at the WRDSB?
Well, first and foremost, to think and believe that when our students enter our system that they will graduate and walk towards the pathway in their life that allows them to reach their full potential. Often we talk about and think about what does 100% graduation rate mean. What that means to me is our students are leaving our system, reaching high academic standards. They feel a real sense of confidence, as well as they have a real sense of well-being and look to make a difference in the world as they go forward with a real sense of social justice and just how they will engage in the world.
I've had the opportunity, Scott, to read some other coverage of interviews that you've granted, and you've talked about restoring trust in public education. Is there a deficit of trust right now?
I don't believe so. I think there's always what I would say always room for improvement. And at this time, and there's been a lot of questions about just what we are about as a district school board. And I want to be clear, very proud of the work we're doing, specifically in numeracy and literacy right now. And that belief of increasing public confidence is at the forefront of our work, and really being able to show the great work that happens within our district. I've had the privilege now of being in a number of schools since I've taken on the director role, and just have been so proud of the work that our staff are doing, the work that our principals and vice principals are leading. And I believe it really is an exciting time for the Waterloo Region District School Board.
Public education has, for the last many years, really been under the microscope. We're hearing a lot about it through the United States, across Canada as well. Do you welcome this scrutiny, or do you feel as though public education is under attack in any way?
I believe ultimately that we should be held accountable to our work, and certainly within the Waterloo Region District School Board, I would go to the province of Ontario that we have an incredible education system here. And when we think of public education, it is such a gift. I mean, we welcome really a microcosm of society into our schools every day. With that, there are many strengths that come. There are also needs that come from a variety of our students, and also to support parents and families. And I welcome that. I do see that as a challenge, and to know that we have the opportunity to provide our students with a pathway that maybe they didn't even see for themselves when they started in our education system or in our school board is a really exciting opportunity in my mind.
I remember speaking to one of our local education unions, Scott, when it was announced that Jiwan Chanaka was no longer with the board. And there was a sense of frustration expressed by that local teachers union around the relationship that had existed, or maybe the lack thereof, with the former director. How do you, as the new director, go about rebuilding those relationships?
Certainly, our relationships with our union partners are so important. They are the people that are doing the great work each and every day. And so, what I've done and made a priority is reaching out and connecting with those groups. I believe is so important, and education is a relational thing, and it's so important that we have opportunities to have open conversation, understanding both what they see as real strengths of our board, but also some of the frustrations that they have. And it's feedback like that really helps inform myself and the teams that I work with in the decisions we're making to create the best working conditions for our staff, which in essence create the best learning conditions for our students.
What role do you see parents playing in the public education system overall?
Well, parents are our partners in this system. Every day, they entrust their most prized possession, and those students come to our schools. So I believe and have always believed that parents provide great insight, and extended families in some cases provide such great insight about who their children are, how we can best support those students. And some of the greatest lessons I've learned throughout my career is times that I've spent and been opening to listen to parents and being able to reflect on my own practice and have improved as a result of that.
There have been some calls, Scott, from trustees on the board today, as well as some families in the community, for some sort of public town hall whereby we can learn more about what happened to the former director and how that relationship disintegrated, and what our public education looks like at the public school board moving forward. Do you welcome that kind of town hall approach?
I welcome opportunities, certainly, to talk to the public. I know right now through our board there's a couple of ways that we're looking at doing that. One was a motion on just that at town hall. Another was to look at other opportunities to engage with our community. I certainly am somebody who looks forward to those two conversations, talking about specifically what we're doing as a school board to best support their children and as students in our system, and certainly in the time that I've been in this role, have had many conversations with parents, families, and community about who we are as a district school board and how we hope that they and their children experience our system.
Scott, I really appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here, and congratulations on the new role.
Thanks again, Mike. My privilege, and anytime.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Scott Miller is the new Director of Education with the Waterloo Region District School Board. A few things by way of quick observation. Number one is Since his installment as the new director, give or take about a month ago, I've heard nothing but good things from those within the board about the appointment of Scott Miller as the new director. The second part of this is I'm reminded of when Drewe Chanaka was hired as the board's director of education, and we received an interview with Drewe Chanaka early on as the new director, and then never heard from him again. This interview with Scott was pretty easy to arrange. So that gives me hope that there is a new sense of keeping the lines of communication open between the board and the public through this platform and through other platforms. But I am hopeful in that regard. And the third observation, just sort of in brief, as Scott Miller assumes the role of Director of Education with our public school board, is I don't think we're ever going to get a fulsome answer as to what the heck happened to the previous Director of Education, Drewe Chanaka. We've pieced a few things, parts of the puzzle together ourselves, but we're not getting much in the way of confirmation as to the very sudden dismissal. And I will remind you, because you heard Scott point this out, he is the sole employee of the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees are the people that we elect to make that hiring decision. And I would encourage you strongly to keep that in mind for 2026. I know that's a ways away. We just started 2025. But when the next municipal election rolls around, you will have an opportunity to decide who represents your concerns at the boardroom table for our public school board. And that is an important choice and one that I think you should make wisely. So those are some general observations from me. What I'm curious to learn from you is whether or not you feel there is a trust deficit to be made up within our public school board. Do you have faith in public education here in the region? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Here on the Mike Farwell Show, this is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I think there's always room for improvement. I want to be clear, I'm very proud of the work we're doing specifically in numeracy and literacy right now. And that belief of increasing public confidence is at the forefront of our work and really being able to show the great work that happens within our district. I've had the privilege now of being in a number of schools since I've taken on the director role and just have been so proud of the work that our staff are doing. And I believe it really is an exciting time for the Waterloo Region District School Board.
Scott Miller is the new Director of Education with our region's public school board, the WRDSB. And he joins us this morning to talk about the challenges that lie ahead and the good work that he believes is being done and has been done within that board building over these last many years, despite the sudden departure of the former director, Drewe Chanaka. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Is there a trust deficit that needs to be made up for you as a resident of this region, maybe a parent, family member of a child within the public school board? Do you have faith in the system today? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. I find these culture wars, if you will, to coin the phrase that's used so often, around public education to be utterly fascinating these days. I grew up in an era where you went to school and you learned the 3 R's and you moved from one grade to the next and you graduated and eventually you got a job. That was kind of the way the stepping stones worked, right? But there's no question at all that the Board of Trustees, the people that we elected in the 2022 municipal election, made a very poor hire with the last Director of Education. That is simply the truth in this. They hired somebody who was self-described as an activist, and that's exactly what they got. They got an activist, and not necessarily someone, I don't believe, that was as interested in furthering the educational development of students as he was in furthering his own activist platform. That's the sense I got from all of this. And hence the very sudden dismissal and departure of the former director. What the board is getting in Scott Miller is somebody who has had various roles within board leadership over the years, over the decades. And they're certainly getting somebody with an educational background here, which I think is really important. Bonnie, good morning.
Yes, I agree with everything you just mentioned. I do believe the director was a bit of an activist. And I think that was the community lost confidence. And I think what the board could potentially do to improve things is get a grip, manage these violent behaviors that are having such a disruption in schools. If they could focus more on that instead of not dealing with it, I think that would be a huge improvement.
Bonnie, I think that's a really good point. And to be fair, our public school board here in the region, not the only board that's dealing with that. Student behaviors are an issue across North America. But we have absolutely seen it here, and we've heard the concerns raised by frontline education workers about the violence, the physical violence they face on a daily basis. George, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. I'm sure Scott Miller is a fine man. He's good for the job. It was a fairly okay interview, but Mike, he didn't answer your question. Did you notice that? The big one you asked at the end, he didn't answer it. He partially answered it.
Right. Yep. In terms of welcoming public feedback, the town hall that the trustees have brought forward in a motion.
Danced around it. He kind of maybe answered it, but he didn't fully answer it. That was very disappointing because I think the public has the right to know what happened with Mr. G1. I can't even pronounce his last name.
George, appreciate that call. And I agree with you. Whatever happened with G1 Chanukah, the now former director, was something that we as taxpayers funded, his salary, whatever severance was there. And essentially, I would make the argument that because we are the ones footing the bill, we are actually the employers. We elected the trustees who hired the director. And so the buck, if you will, literally in this case, stops with us. Sadly, I don't think we're going to get as much information as we would like in that regard. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. U.S. President Donald Trump's threatened tariffs could take effect tomorrow. How might that impact the work done by our food bank of Waterloo Region? We'll explore that idea and more as the CEO of the Food Bank of Waterloo Region joins us for a conversation next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a new month, and on the first Monday of every month at this time, our good friend Kim Wilhelm, who is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, joins us in studio. During that update with Matt Hutchison, Kim and I were just comparing inbox woes. It's just the never-ending cycle, isn't it, Kim?
I feel like we could spend this whole conversation talking about inboxes.
We could. We absolutely could. But there are other things to talk about, including a provincial election that just happened in this province and what that means for the food bank, tariff threats. They could take effect tomorrow. That might have an impact. We want to know how people can get involved in the work that you do and so much more. So as always, thank you very much for your time. It's great to see you. And it's good to know that I'm not the only one with inbox woes.
Absolutely not. But as always, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's start, if we can, Kim, with an idea of food insecurity and a sense of what that looks like here in the region right now. How many people are accessing and food assistance and what food insecurity looks like?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, things haven't changed drastically, but I do have some more specific numbers that I want to share to really explain what I mean when I say more and more people are looking to food banks each and every month, and a little more tangibly. So in the month of January alone, over 25,000 adults and children relied on a food hamper program right here in Waterloo Region. That's a 10% increase over last January. Now, let's put that into perspective a little bit more. That's 8,600 households that our network, the Community Food Assistance Network, served. And on top of that, our network partners served over 100,000 community meals. 100,000 just in the month of January. And what these numbers are sharing is that there continues to be an urgent need for food assistance. With the financial strain continuing to grow, we expect that demand is just going to keep on rising. Another way to look at it is just not only the high cost of living with groceries and whatnot, but mortgage rates. There was a report by Equifax Canada that was recently released, and it showed that last quarter of 2024, over 11,000 Ontarians had missed a mortgage payment that month. And this report also shows that 1 million, let me say that again, 1 million mortgages are up for renewal this year. What is that going to mean for the individuals who are already stretched to pay their monthly expenses if their mortgage rates are going to be higher than what their previous mortgages were? That's going to tell us that likely more and more people are going to continue to access food assistance here in Waterloo Region.
So that makes me think, when and it's funny, I heard the same report, and I had a conversation with another friend just over the weekend about his concerns. He expressed about what happens when these mortgage renewals are coming up and what's that going to do to household budgets. One of the other big things in the news, Kim, is tariffs. And we know, we're talking about it all morning because tomorrow is March the 4th. That's the latest deadline that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, says tariffs will be imposed on Canada. How might tariffs impact your work at the food bank?
Well, we know that there's still a lot of uncertainty around tariffs and what that actually means. But what we do know is that we can expect higher grocery prices when we go and pick up our weekly groceries. We know that the rising costs are already putting strains on households who are accessing food assistance and already struggling. And when essentials like groceries or housing get more expensive, food is often the first thing that people cut back on, and it shouldn't be. But food tends to be the discretionary thing because you usually have a little bit more control over that. Things like mortgages, rent, other utilities, they come out of our bank account automatically. Whereas food, we choose what we're going to buy, and then we can pay for that accordingly. But food is a basic human right. And no one should have to choose between buying groceries or paying their rent. But thousands of people are making that choice each and every month, not only in Waterloo Region, but in Ontario and in Canada. So as things unfold over the next number of weeks, like I said, there's a lot of unknowns right now. We're continuing to monitor what that looks like, how many people are accessing food assistance, the price of our own food purchases. We expect that to increase as well. It's not just the food of those who are accessing food assistance, but the Food Bank of Waterloo Region also purchases a significant volume of food each and every week. And so we're closely monitoring that as well.
I remember us talking well before the provincial election about ODSP or Ontario Works rates and how the food bank would, I think, naturally support an increase to those rates because we have heard it described as legislated poverty, where there just isn't enough in those payments. So here we are, having just gone through the provincial election campaign. The new government is the same as the old government, and we're into a third term with Doug Ford and the Ontario Progressive Conservatives. What are you hoping to see from elected officials provincially, Kim, in terms of what they might be able to do for legislated poverty and the relationship with the food bank?
Well, truthfully, nothing has changed for me since, and the food bank since the election. I will be reaching out to those who were reelected and talk about that poverty really is the key driver of food insecurity in Ontario and Waterloo Region. And to address food insecurity, we need strong, effective poverty reduction strategies. And one of those that you talked about comes to the OW rate, adjusting the Ontario Works rates and increasing the earned income exemption so that people can better afford the necessities while working towards financial stability. So that's the first one. The second one, building more affordable homes and expanding rental supplements and implementing rent control. Waterloo Region has put a focus on affordable housing, which is so important, and I hope that that will continue to be something that not only is focused on here in Waterloo Region, but in Ontario. And then finally, we also need to support workers in creating quality jobs that provide stability as well as a living wage. So those three asks, those were the three asks that I had going into this election, and I will continue to work with elected officials to ensure that that remains a priority moving forward.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. She joins us in studio on the first Monday of every month to give us an update as to where we're at when it comes to food insecurity in our community and talk about other issues around food. One of the things that Kim talks about often is nutritious food. Why is that so important, and how can we get behind the work that the Food Bank of Waterloo Region is doing? We'll find out the answers to those questions and more as we continue with Kim Wilhelm and the Food Bank of Waterloo Region here on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Kim Wilhelm is the CEO of the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, joins us in studio on the first Monday of every month at 10:30 to talk all things Food Bank and how we as community members can participate in the work that they do. Kim, oftentimes when you and I are talking, I hear you make references to nutritious food and nutrition. What is it that makes nutrition and nutritious food such an important focus for the Food Bank of Waterloo Region?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because at the Food Bank, we are providing fresh, nutritious food, because food insecurity isn't just about having enough to eat, but it's also about access to healthy and balanced meals. Good nutrition is essential for the overall well-being. I'm sure we can all relate to times when we made less nutritious food choices and it didn't make us feel so good. But when we're choosing healthy and nutritious food, we know that just generally we feel better and we have an overall better well-being. And so when somebody accesses food through our network at the Community Food Assistance Network, we want to make sure that they have access to the same. Dignity is so important to somebody who is accessing food assistance. And we actually have a registered dietitian on staff, Chelsea, who works closely with our network partners to ensure food hampers follow Canada's food guide. Each hamper includes a variety of fresh fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy products, and protein-rich food. And that's given to individuals and families so that they can prepare a full balanced meal. We also, in some cases, our programs are providing food based on, I'm going to say, skids that we give them. But then on the other hand, we're actually preparing perishable, healthy food hampers that go out to the programs. And every week those look different, but they have a huge variety of fresh vegetables and fruit, usually a frozen protein. And when you look at them, they really are beautiful, beautiful hampers. But to help people make the most of what they receive, we're also creating recipes on our blogs that people can follow. And those recipes use commonly used ingredients, simple ingredients that somebody may find in their food hamper. And all of those recipes are on our blog at thefoodbank.ca. And March is actually Nutrition Month. That's the other thing, that through this month, our commitment to providing nutritious food and supporting healthy eating is something that we're talking about a lot of. And it's just really important for us to be able to share that information with the community.
I think it's great that we have this emphasis on nutrition instead of, and I think that's a good reminder for us when we're adding something else to our shopping cart, if we're able to, or dropping something in that box at a grocery store, that, you know, we can maybe give a little bit more thought to the nutritional value of what's going in there.
Definitely. I often say things that are low in sodium but high in protein are great options when we're talking about non-perishable food items.
Okay. I know that this weekend there's an event coming up at Conestoga Mall that it's what a great opportunity for us as a community to get behind the work that you do at the food bank. Construction,
not to be confused with construction, but C-A-N. And it's a fun event. And it's you and I have these great conversations every month, but sometimes food insecurity is not an easy topic to talk about. And so construction is an opportunity, one, to have fun, two, to raise funds, but also three, to have that uncomfortable conversation. It's a way to bring families and friends together at Conestoga Mall to view some really incredible structures made out of food. So I encourage anyone, construction starts on Saturday of this week at Conestoga Mall. Bring your families down, walk through the mall, look at what creative, and I mean creative things that other community members have done over the last number of months to get ready for this incredible event. And here's a little tip that I like to tell people. When you're walking through the mall looking at these structures, look at them, but then also pull out your phone if you're able and look through the lens of your camera at these structures. I promise you, it'll look that much better.
And take a picture and post it on social media.
Absolutely.
Kim, I love it. We'll watch for that visual construction at Conestoga Mall this weekend. And thanks for the work you and the entire team do at the food bank.
Well, thanks for having me today and being able to talk about this important issue in our community.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. Make sure you check out that blog and all sorts of other things, including your opportunity to make a donation when you visit thefoodbank.ca. Kim joins us on the first Monday of every month at 10:30 here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is Monday, and that means David Drewe joins us for Drewe's Views, which he will do in just over 30 minutes' time. David is here every Monday morning at 11:30, and I can only imagine what he thinks of the just finished provincial election campaign and the near to the finish line Liberal leadership race. I mean, are the numbers for Mark Carney somehow artificially inflated? We'll get into all of that with David Drewe during Drewe's Views this morning at 11:30. Following the 11 a.m. update from the 570 News Center, which is just a few minutes away. This week in music history, and we're going to get some Canadian content, some CanCon love during this week in music history, and lots more with our musicologist, Brian Allison. I always look forward to this on Monday mornings. I hope you do too. Just something I mentioned kind of in passing during the Farwell Show 5, which are the 5 little quick headlines I give you to start the show every day. And surrounding this strike by outside workers here in the region, a number of things come to mind for me, not the least of which is whether or not, and I know that this can come across poorly, and I'll just, take those criticisms, I guess, as they come. Because I mean this sincerely, I do believe in the importance of collective bargaining and ensuring that it's still allowed to happen. I struggle, though, when the collective bargaining is happening between an employer and an employee when there are hundreds of thousands of people who are impacted. And those hundreds of thousands of people, of course, are the residents here in the region of Waterloo. We become the ones who suffer because the people who serve us publicly, our public servants, go on strike. And I'm not sure that's the way it ought to be. I would be willing to entertain discussions around every public servant being an essential service, because as citizens in this community, don't we deserve those services every day? Isn't that kind of the way that it works? The other thing I wonder about is the region has been quick to say there will be little impact on day-to-day services. Yes, our landfill sites are closed in Cambridge and Waterloo, but other than that, things just move along. I wonder for how long, though. Like, for how many more days will a strike drag on before we, as citizens, begin to feel a greater impact? I'm curious about that. And the thing I'm most curious about in this entire ordeal is the story that we've been getting from the union, which said there was an offer on the table one day, and the next day that offer was removed. Well, why didn't you take the offer that was on the table in the first place when it had more money in it? What was wrong with that offer? And then you say, well, then the region pulled it back. Well, why didn't you take it? I think that needs to be explored a little bit further as well. We'll see how this all plays out. This week in music history, coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I love me some Rod Stewart, and I love me some Maggie May even more. Why do we choose Rod Stewart to start this week in music history with musicologist Brian Allison? Well, we'll get to it for sure as we welcome Brian back to the program. Good morning, my friend.
Hi, Mike.
How's the weekend?
It was nice. How about yours?
Good. Also nice. Thank you. Also, one of my absolute favorite stories from music history happened this week. More popular, Brian, than Jesus Christ himself.
Yep. It was said there's a context to it. We'll talk about it.
And the context.
You want to go there first with John?
I want to go there first with John, yes.
Okay. Well, this happened in 1966, and it really hit just as Beatlemania was taking up a very, very firm hold. Well, I mean, Beatlemania had been happening, but we were in the depths of Beatlemania on a global basis. The Beatles were just infallible at that particular moment. And John had given an interview to a journalist named Maureen Cleave a number of years earlier in the UK. And Maureen was a friend of his. You know, they were acquaintances, but it was an interview that he agreed to do. And he had said, they were talking about religion, organized religion in England. And what he said was that he was saying it very cynically, that, you know, he said religion will go because the Beatles are more popular than Jesus right now. And he was saying that as a reference to, you know, something such as the Beatles, a concept like the Beatles has become more important to kids than going to church, which I don't think was an untrue thing to say. I'm sure if you ask most teenagers in the early 60s, especially in England, if they would, you know, rather attend church on Sunday or go to a Beatles concert, most of them probably would have chosen the Beatles concert. But him saying that the Beatles are more popular than Jesus Christ was taken out of context in the U.S. And when they came back to the U.S. to tour, it was quite a backlash. There were protests particularly in the South, there were record burnings, and, they wanted John to apologize and say, you're not better than Jesus. And he came out and did a very famous press conference where he said, I never meant that we were better than Jesus as a person or God as a thing or whatever it is. I just said this in reference to kids in England, that we meant more, we as in a concept such as the Beatles, not specifically the Beatles, we meant more to kids than Jesus did. And I'm sorry that I said it and it was wrong, or it was taken wrong, and that was sort of the end of it. It did fade away fairly quickly. The girls still screamed. People still bought Beatle records and went to their concerts. There were some, far-right religious groups that banned them and wanted them, hung. But of course, that never happened. So we got over it. But it was a quite a big controversy for a few moments there in 1966.
Many years ago, Brian, on the first motorcycle trip I took with friends, we went to Chicago, and on our second day stopped by Joliet, Illinois, at the prison where the Blues Brothers was at least partly filmed. And I'm remembering that motorcycle trip on this day in music history with good reason as well.
Yeah, sadly, it was a big thing when we lost John Belushi in 1982. So March 5th, 1982, John passed away from a drug overdose, which many people were not surprised as John was quite deep into drugs at that point, and there had been several interventions with friends to try to get him to stop, and it just didn't take, and sadly he passed away. But I mean, the significance of what John Belushi brought to music specifically was important. The Blues Brothers were a touring musical band. They had a #1 album. Again, John is famous, and this has never been recreated since by any celebrity. During one particular moment, he had the #1 television show, being Saturday Night Live. He had the #1 album, being the Blues Brothers album, and he was in the #1 film, Animal House, all simultaneously. Nobody's ever achieved that since. So it was pretty incredible. And then, of course, for him to die sort of right in the middle of that massive popularity was very, very sad. And we still miss John to these days.
I started today with Rod Stewart's Maggie May because I love it, but also on This Week in Music History, Rod Stewart was being sued.
Yes, definitely. And for that song particularly. And it's a story that, not a lot of people might know about. So in 2003, a UK musician, his name was Ray Jackson, and Ray had found some fame with a band called Lindisfarne in the UK. They mostly had some regional hits in England in the early 70s. I don't know that they ever achieved a great deal of success outside of England. So Ray Jackson was, I'm going to say a relatively unknown musician. But he was called in during the making of Rod's album, Every Picture Tells a Story. And Rod had recorded this song called Maggie May, and there was a bit sort of in the middle where they didn't know what to do with. There was about 8 frames of music, and they had to add something to them. And they decided that they were going to add a mandolin solo. So Ray was called in to do a mandolin section on Maggie May, which he did. He wrote that section of mandolin music. It was recorded, I think, in just 2 takes and ended up on the album. And he stuck around, and he did mandolin work on 2 other tracks on that album as well. So he was on 3 tracks on the record. He was paid £15 for the recording session in 1971. I'm not sure if that was standard rate at the time. It doesn't seem like a lot of money, but that's what he got. When the album came out, Ray assumed that he was going to maybe get, some extra pay because of the success of Maggie May. It went on to become a #1 hit, but he was not compensated at all. And to add insult to injury, which kind of I felt might have been the precipitating part of this that grew his anger in this situation, the liner notes on the album, and I have the album, you can open it up and read this. It says, quote, "The mandolin was played by the mandolin player from Lindisfarne. His name slips my mind."
Wow.
So he didn't even get a name mention for writing that mandolin solo in Maggie May. It was left out. So he decided he was going to sue Rod Stewart, in 2003, finally, after many, many years, and wanted to kind of reclaim some of that financially, because he wrote the piece and he was not even given credit for it.
Rod Stewart is a naughty, naughty boy.
Well, I get that when you're recording an album, you'll bring in session recorders for some parts. But to me, if somebody comes in and plays something that you wrote, fine, you just get the fee for playing on it. But if you actually wrote that solo and it became a big hit, I would think that the artist would come back and say, hey, we're going to give you a cut of this, because, I mean, that mandolin solo is pretty iconic. When you hear that song, if you take out the mandolin solo, it's not even the same song anymore.
Absolutely.
Very, very unique sound. So I don't know. I kind of think that Rod might owe Ray Jackson some money for that. I searched all weekend on the internet to try to find some information about how this case ended up and found nothing. So I am still on the hunt for information about if Ray Jackson was successful in getting some money from Rod Stewart for that mandolin solo in Maggie May.
Brian Allison is a musicologist who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History. I encourage you to check out Brian's Facebook page, This Week in Music History, to get a full rundown of this particular week in music history. We've got more to cover, including a pop band with a connection to Kitchener, one of the best-selling duos of all time, and a little Canadian content as well, as we continue This Week in Music History on the Mike Farwell Show this morning, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Girl, you're looking fine tonight, and every guy has got you in his side. What you're doing with a clown like me is surely one of life's little mysteries. So tonight I'll the stars above. How did I ever win your love? What did I do? What did I say to turn your angel eyes my way?
I could not resist a little bit of Jeff Healey as we look back at This Week in Music History with our musicologist friend Brian Allison, because, Brian, it was on This Week in Music History that we lost the Canadian singer-songwriter.
So sad.
Yeah.
March 2nd in 2008, we lost the great Jeff Healey to cancer, which was a tragedy for sure. Jeff had cancer. This was his second run. In fact, it was a rare cancer of the eye when he was just 8 months old that cost him his sight, and that resulted in his eyes being surgically removed before he was a year old. And he went on to live cancer-free for 38 years before he developed cancer later on in life. Obviously, an incredibly talented artist. Jeff was an incredible guitar player, an amazing performer, an amazing songwriter, and a strong advocate for people with disabilities as well, which puts him on a higher plane for myself especially. So I think that's great. He released 12 albums during his career. I'm not sure if you know this, but Jeff had a long-running radio show as well about music, and he worked with a ton of artists, some of the big ones. He worked with Stevie Ray Vaughan. He worked with Buddy Guy, B.B. King. He worked with ZZ Top. He worked with Eric Clapton. Lots of bands were inspired by Jeff. He even did a little acting. I'm sure you remember seeing Roadhouse, and Jeff and his band were the featured Roadhouse band, and he had a few lines even in the movie. So it was a sad day when we lost Jeff. Quintessentially Canadian, an all-around great guy from what people say, and we miss him very dearly.
No question about it. One of the greatest selling duos of all time. Yes, right up there with Brooks and Dunn and Hall and Oates. Simon and Garfunkel have a note on This Week in Music History.
Do they ever? Yeah, March 7th, 1970. We're going back 55 years, Mike. Can you believe that? And they released their seminal album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, which was an incredible piece of work. It was their fifth record and went on to break records on both sides of the Atlantic. It would sell, I think, upwards of 25 million copies worldwide, earned them a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year, which they won, Best Engineered Recording, Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Contemporary Song, and Best Arrangement by an Accompanied Vocalist awards at the Grammys. So some big, big kudos to that record. Sadly, it was also the demise of Simon and Garfunkel. It essentially ended their partnership as a recording duo, which was very sad because their body of work speaks for itself. I think if you go back and look at what Simon and Garfunkel recorded back in the late 60s and early 70s, it's pretty incredible body of work. But during the recording of this record, things were getting more and more tense between Art and Paul. Eventually, Art said, I'm going to take off and go film a movie because I'm not feeling the love here. So he went off to Mexico and filmed Catch-22, which he was featured in. And Paul Simon stayed in New York and continued to record the album. And from there, it sort of didn't end well. They ended their relationship professionally and personally, and it's been fraught ever since. I think they did have a few very tense reunions along the way, but those were not reunions that were full of love for one another. They would essentially agree to go on stage at like the famous concert in Central Park in 1980. They've both said, like, we basically walked on stage, performed together, smiled for the audience, and then walked off stage and went in separate directions. There wasn't a hugging and high-fiving, and it's great to see you backstage. So it's a bit sad for me because when you think about, again, their body of work, so impressive, but to know that relationship has just not sustained. Plain and simple, they just didn't get along. They didn't mesh well in the studio, and it ended. But a great record, Bridge Over Troubled Water, still an incredible album. It spent a 10-week run on the top of the U.S. charts, which was a pretty big accomplishment in 1970. So awesome. 55 years ago for that. And just before I let you go, we have to go back a little bit further. It'll be this Wednesday, the 5th, that a couple of well-known musicians celebrate birthday number 63, if I've got my math right. Craig and Charlie Reid. Yeah. So Craig and Charlie are the Proclaimers. Yeah. Who most people know as the great Scottish duo. If you've ever seen them interviewed, I need subtitles because their Scottish accents are extremely strong. They're almost difficult to understand. But yeah, they're turning. They're having a birthday this week. They were born March 5th, 1962. So you're correct. That would make them 63 years old. And they do have a tie to Kitchener. Probably a lot of people don't know this, but they filmed a video in downtown Kitchener a few years back, and it was a lot of scenery from City Hall, and you can also see a number of the downtown businesses. Rumpelfelt, I think, is featured in the background. I tried to go back and watch the video and saw most of it this morning just to refresh my memory. But yeah, the Proclaimers were here in Kitchener filming a video, which is pretty cool. It certainly is, as is this weekly walk down a musical memory lane. Brian, appreciate you being here again, my friend. Thank you. Love it. Look forward to talking to you next Monday, Mike. All right. Bye-bye. See you soon. Brian Allison, musicologist, This Week in Music History. I encourage you to follow the Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. More tidbits just like that. There's a touch, the Proclaimers video filmed in Kitchener. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, so another provincial election is in the books. What was going on in Kitchener-Conestoga anyway? And what do we make of the final leg of the Liberal leadership race federally? We discuss it all with David Drewe. Drewe's Views coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now, that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
That is our man, David Drewe, owner, Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, former Conservative Party staffer, and joins us in studio every Monday morning, 11:30, for Drewe's Views. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
The Ontario provincial election. I love the way that you have phrased this, David. On election night now in Ontario, it's just like passing through grades in public schools. Nobody loses. Nobody gets held back.
You get a ribbon for everything, baby.
Every party has a success story to share.
Every party leader, more importantly for their own sakes, has some really solid things to brag about. So it's kind of neat that way where, you know, Bonnie Crombie does not win her own seat. Bonnie Crombie fails to break through in the Peel region in the 905 as promised, as branded. But Bonnie Crombie brought them back to party status. And that is a huge milestone, no matter how you look at it. I forget who it was who said, now they'll be able to build the undercarriage for the car that they'll be taking into the next election. All of those little pieces they didn't have this time. So, you know, Pyrrhic victory, yay. The NDP lost seats, lost huge in popular vote, but almost every one of their incumbents who won increased their margin of victory. So as much as this was a loss for the party province-wide, every single re-elected MPP is able to say, and thanks to you, we won by even more. The Conservatives got a third majority, first since Leslie Frost. They've got something to be happy about. The Green Party retained 2 seats for the first time in a general election. They've got something to crow about. Everybody has something to say. Woo-hoo, we won. And none of the parties are looking at their leaders and saying, yeah, but Doug Ford, you said 91 seats and you only got 80? I don't remember how the final numbers split. You know, Bonnie Crombie, you were supposed to have been so huge in bringing the 905 back to us, and you didn't even win your own stupid seat in the city that you were mayor of and an MP for. Marit Stiles, like, we lost seats, and I think it's about 1 million votes they've dropped over the last 2 elections. They have issues coming forward. Like, there's a whole lot of issues everybody's got to deal with coming forward, but if you read the story after the election, there's no hassles for any of these leaders going forward, and everybody's just very happy with how it turned out.
So where do we begin? Well, let's begin with the Green Party in looking at its next 4 years and maybe even beyond, David. And I'll be honest, I quite like Mike Schreiner. I do, as a person, as a politician. But Parry Sound Muskoka was apparently there for the taking again, and again, the Greens couldn't win it. When do we just kind of give up on the fledgling party?
Well, I'm going to come back to this for a whole lot of different angles along these questions, I'm imagining. But this election was kind of singular. As much as the NDP are saying, yeah, our incumbents won by more, so did the Conservative incumbents by and large. So did the Liberal incumbents by and large. Mainly, if you were an incumbent who got reelected, you were reelected with a huger margin. Everybody was going incumbent this election, going for security locally this election with the no risk. And so it really wasn't a good election for the Greens to be taking a third seat. They got crowded out of the conversation where they didn't already have the territory. So if I was the Greens, I would be so frustrated by the fact that this... I mean, look, Mark Carney eventually did run for the Liberals. Eventually the Greens will take this seat. You know, it's not just forever in the distance.
All right. Big risk for the Ontario Liberals in the next 4 years. Your point about returning to party status notwithstanding has got to be having a leader without a seat. Yes?
Yes. And they don't have a whole lot of seats that are safe to give up for the leader to run in. They don't want to be just running her in any seat that comes along and have her start losing around the province. Like, I'm not saying she would be losing, but, you know, if all of a sudden Huron-Bruce opens up, don't run there, Bonnie. Do not run in Huron-Bruce, you know. Do not run in Hamilton Centre. There are some ridings that you just should not be running in as a Liberal. So if those open up, but how does she communicate? It'll be easier for her to communicate at Queen's Park because now, even though she's not an MP, she'll have a leader's office there. She will have staff there. So she will have an easier time in a whole lot of ways, but they're still going to be well crowded out on committees. You know, they're barely party status, so they might have one member on each committee. She will have no presence there. She will have, and honestly, I got to say, I don't think question period presence matters provincially like it does federally. I don't recall the last time I ever heard or saw a clip from provincial question period. You know, in federal, it tends to get covered, but how much do you lose by not being at Queen's Park? I don't know. But then the next part, though, is their vote went from 24% to 30%. And they got 2 more seats out of it, 3 more seats out of it. So they really, really need to be hanging on to every shred of this vote, because if they drop a little bit, they could be back in the wilderness pretty darn quick. On the other hand, a couple of percentage points more, and they are on the verge of a lot of seats. It's just the nature of they got this many votes for these few seats. It's like with Justin Trudeau, the opposite. If he drops a couple points, he loses a massive amount of seats because he won so many with such a small share of the vote. The Liberals provincially are in the opposite situation. They have such a huge share of the vote, but it spreads so wide that it doesn't really pay off. But a couple percentage points more, and all of a sudden things start flipping their way in a whole lot of ridings.
Marit Stiles, as the leader of the NDP, continues, I think, what Andrea Horwath started, and that is entrenching the provincial New Democrats as the official opposition. I don't think we think of them as anything but. Catherine Fife, locally, who won Waterloo for a 5th time, was openly talking about, if not electoral reform, some courageous conversations around uniting the left. Is that what Marit Stiles is going to have to walk a fine line on over the next number of years?
I'm really wondering what the look on Marit Stiles' face was when she read about Catherine wanting to propose and get along with the other parties. Like, that's just generally not something that the head offices approve Sherpas going freelance on. So either Marit Stiles was really, really angry, or her office is in on this idea. She has the exact opposite problem of the Liberals, though. They have they dropped 6% of the vote from 24 to 18, and they lost a couple seats, but they have eliminated themselves from any growth potential. They still do not look like the party that will unseat Doug Ford eventually, because they have so few seats, and they have, you know, everywhere where they did not win, they disappeared. We'll talk about Kitchener-Conestoga in a bit, but that story was told in so many NDP unheld ridings where they had placed very well last election and this election. And the election before that, they'd done even better, like 1 million votes over 2 elections the NDP has dropped. So you can hang on to these seats, but if you do not grow beyond these seats, sooner or later, Catherine Fife is going to retire. And there will be no NDP brand to carry this riding beyond Catherine Fife. That is the fear, or the existential threat for Marit Stiles is, wow, we have all these little islands around, but like Catherine Fife, honestly, where would the next nearest NDP seat be, Mike? Like, how far does Catherine have to drive to run into somebody. Like
probably Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have these fortresses here and there. You know, they've got Sudbury and Nickel Belt up there that little bit, but Timmins is now blue. So how do they grow beyond where they already are when they're having trouble retaining where they are? You know, they lost 4, but that is just existential. Like, if you are not viewed as somebody who will be eventually the government, you're down to the forces of personality in each and every riding with their own individual machines. And, you know, when Catherine Fife retires or moves on to something else or starts running this new all-around progressive party, will she carry the riding? You know, it's just, ugh.
We call her Catherine 5 now, by the way. Five times. Five-time winner. Yes, that's right. Okay, quickly before we take a break, let's talk Doug Ford, because maybe it wasn't 91 seats. I don't know that it matters. It's 3 strong majorities based on the way we do things here. What is he looking at the next 4 years? Is he going to start thinking about a 4th term?
Let me throw it to you this way. I voted Conservative. I am so glad they didn't get 91 seats. I think we've talked about this a few times. That is far too many. It's far too many for a premier to, like, at that point, they've probably got some people getting elected who haven't been vetted properly because they were like, well, what are the odds, you know? Who cares? We just need a placeholder there. And it's like, oh, you got that guy from Sudbury who's been convicted of beating his mother, who's running every election since, you know. Things go wrong when you were no chance riding start coming in. But also, it's good for the government. It's good for our democracy to not have 91 government MPPs in that house, because that would literally mean half of them could stay home and they would still have a majority at Queen's Park. That's not good for anybody. You know, I'm glad Doug Ford has a strong majority. And I'm so glad he didn't get the majority that we were talking about him getting last week, because that would have been bad for all of us.
David Drewe joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, for Drewe's Views. What happened in Kitchener-Conestoga? And the numbers in the Liberal leadership contest as we head towards the finish line. We'll continue the conversation here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. David joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, for Drewe's Views. Let's talk about Kitchener-Conestoga, David. Joe Gowing, the Liberal candidate, on the Sunday, about 4 days before the election, posted publicly on X at the NDP candidate, Jody Szymanski, and said, "Step down now. Polling says I'm leading in this riding." I think he meant amongst the progressives. But if you get out of the way, I can save the farmland. Of course, that was tweeted and deleted within about 20 minutes. And what ended up happening at an all-candidates forum some 36 hours later is the Green candidate said, "I'm out. I'm putting my support behind Jody Szymanski." And, well, at the end, it turned out that Joe Gowing was running second. And if you were to take his votes and Jody Szymanski's votes, it would have beaten Mike Harris Jr.'s votes, who won the riding. Would any of this have saved the farmland, though?
No. No.
We're not saving farmland.
Well, not by electing either Jody or Joe. They'd be sitting in opposition. And honestly, that would probably just make it easier for the provincial government to steamroll us, because they wouldn't have to worry about saving that one seat. That was the most bizarre argument of the entire election locally. Like, vote for me to save the farmland. No, you are not becoming all of a sudden the executive government for this area. You are not the petty fiefdom of Kitchener-Conestoga run by... No, you are one seat out of 133, one seat in caucus, and if you're not the cabinet minister responsible for this portfolio, you're going cap in hand. And an opposition politician walking up to the premier or the minister saying, "Well, you know, my community voted against this." Yes. So, bye. If you even get a response to the email, you know, there would have been no difference the forward agenda for this land assembly, regardless of which opposition person had been elected. They would have had a great run of media off it, like a lot of organizers already have, but no, it wouldn't have changed anything at Queen's Park. Not at all. But back to the risk on Doug Ford. You asked me if he was going to run again before the commercial break, and my answer to Doug is, Doug, I really, really hope you don't. Because you are going down right now as a history-making premier. There's no... People can complain about you however they want, but you have done something historic. Don't taint that. Stephen Harper would be remembered very differently if he had not run in 2015. You can go down as bigger than Bill Davis. Do that. Walk away at some point. Succession, baby.
Good luck. Good luck. Many people have been waiting for this time in their political lives. We are now into the final days of Justin Trudeau's leadership of the federal Liberal Party and, of course, his job as Prime Minister. And it appears as though Mark Carney is running away with it. And not only that, but also bringing the Liberals back into the conversation federally with the Conservatives. What do we make of this?
Yeah, I'm not going to go any near that Carney was lying stuff. He had a really, really bad week last week. But we went through a couple examples last week of why the Liberal numbers might be so good. And I just thought of one as I was thinking about the show notes. And it's, we're kind of at war. This is I forget who called it the most existential threat to Canada since the War of 1812. We are at a point where we rally around the flag. And like we've been saying since December, at some point this country moved past Justin Trudeau. And so people are now looking at Mark Carney as the person we are rallying behind because he is the de facto next prime minister. Everybody knows it. So we're already there. That could be another reason why he's high in the numbers. But yeah, this whole saying stuff in English and saying stuff in French, it's going to catch up to him at some point, or he's going to have to clean it up. It's like his campaign is great, but he's not that great so far.
Chrystia Freeland doesn't have a chance, eh?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Like, honestly, nobody has a chance. It's his. The question, though, is how far is the second place and who it is.
Very interesting times, federally, provincially, and always on Monday mornings at 11:30 when David Drewe joins us on Drew's Views here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Wednesday or Monday morning, I'm moving time again. Holy Moses, I'm thinking ahead to Wednesday's show. Every Monday morning at 11:30, David Drewe, owner negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies, joins us for Drew's Views. And every now and again, he says, you know what, I can stick around and listen more to some of your loyal and freaky listeners. And today is one of those days that David says he can stick around for the next hour, a part of it anyway, rant or rave. David, do you still wish to do that, even knowing that to start the next hour, I have to issue a massive apology for something I screwed up so bad last week. I have to take care of that business. So you may become an accomplice in this.
May I heckle you while you apologize, perhaps, and just torque this up a little bit? Could we have some fun?
You can do whatever you want. I give you the microphone and it's yours to use. Yes, you can do whatever you want once.
Okay.
So I guess he's still going to stick around. So Rant or Rave is our next 60 minutes. Every Monday, the Talkback Hour is devoted to your rants and or your raves. And I got a call right at the end of the show. Like, Jay, where were you on Friday when I needed you? Right at the end of the show, Jay called and reminded me what a screw up I am. And so I have been reminded. I've gotten it all sorted out. I have found all of the audio of my transgressions, and we'll try to make amends when the Rant or Rave Hour begins, right after this update from the 570 News Center. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Got the papers and the the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Every day from noon until 1, we open the phone lines so we can hear from you during the Talkback Hour. It being Monday, this is Rant and or Rave on the Talkback Hour. And we must begin with some important begging for forgiveness on the part of yours truly. Jay called me right at the end of the show on Friday. I don't know where he was earlier in the show when I really could have used him, but at the end of the show, he said, "Hey, Farwell, you were going to tell us that story about the freak injury that you suffered, and you never did. You promised you were going to tell us on Friday." And I couldn't for the life of me remember.
Was this the one about you sleeping?
Well, that's the thing.
Because I could totally top that, by the way.
I bet you could.
I woke up one day after sleeping and my arm was a bit numb. Long story short, 6 months later, I'm having a vertebrae pulled out of my neck.
Excuse me?
Yeah. I woke up. Like I've told you before about my neck surgery.
Yeah.
That all started with me waking up New Year's Day thinking I'd slept funny on my arm, but it kept getting worse through the day and worse through the day. So yeah, I injured myself by falling asleep too, only in my case, like I ended up in surgery.
Okay, so I'm not concerned at all now. Thank you very much.
Sorry, yours is like nothing. You're just old.
I'm so old.
You're so old, but I'm pathetic.
I'm old. David Drewe, who's sticking around for Rant or Rave today, is pathetic. By the way, the knot in my neck / shoulder, marginally better, but only marginally. Go to sleep, fine. Wake up, less than fine.
I canceled tickets to Sunny Landreth. It got so bad for me.
That's how bad it was, right? But that wasn't the story that I had promised to tell. And so when Jay was asking about this, I'm like, then I remembered something last Thursday I said, I'm going to get back to it. I'm going to come back to this and tell you the story. But it wasn't about an injury. So fortunately, everything gets recorded around here. And this is what happened. Oh, hang on. That was my fault. I turned this off before because I watched a video. I watch videos while I'm at work. Here we go. It's funny that Fred's on the phone today because I am still haunted by the call he made. I think it was Monday. He called and asked me a direct question. I think I'm going to share it on the show again tomorrow between noon and 1. And I'm still haunted by the answer I gave and the question that he asked. But phones are busy today. So just put a pin in that. We're going to get to it tomorrow. I said that on Thursday last week, the 27th of February. I did not write it down, so I forgot to share the story, to recount the question that had haunted me since Fred called in and asked.
I'm looking right now. I just checked. You always have a pen in your hand.
I always have a pen in my hand.
You tell us listeners about, how you can't do this without a pen in your hand.
I don't use it anymore.
Yeah, well, although I don't see any paper.
Well, there's some paper over here. That's part of the problem. I should put the paper right in front of me. So that's the big screw up. Like that is a golden rule of this job. You have to follow through. It's called promise of performance. And I let you down. And then Jay let me down by not calling till the very last minute on Friday, when I couldn't remember anything. But then I pieced it all together thanks to the magic of audio. And this was Fred's question last Tuesday that haunted me all week. Fred, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Change it up a little bit here. I just thought about something the other day, and with you doing the Kitchen Arrangers and with you doing this show as well, if it came down to it, say, for instance, the company said to you, okay, we're going to give you the total payment for doing both jobs, but you can only do one. Do you do only the Kitchen Arrangers or do you only do this show?
That's what Fred wanted to know, and I did not have a good answer. David Drewe.
I thought your answer was good. You said you ask me right now, and I'll say this one, but I might have a different answer later when I'm doing that one. And as somebody with ADHD who's very interested in the shiny, jingly thing that's nearest to me, I thought that was the totally logical answer, and I understood it totally.
I felt like a politician dodging a question. I really did.
Yeah, it's not so easy. Hey,
no, it's not exactly.
Well, welcome to the other side of the mic, Sarky jerk.
What would you do?
For that?
Yeah.
If that's honesty, I would have said that.
Okay.
The other way to go about it, if you really wanted to be mealy-mouthed, though, see, that's why I respect it. You're like, you ask me now, I might answer later differently. But the mealy-mouthed way to do it would be to have said, well, I really love this about this and that about that. And if I could, I'd just whip them together into the perfect little... And, it's like, well, I'm not answering your question. Instead, I'm creating this impossible comparison thing. That's the good political dodge.
The reality is, of course, it is an impossible question. It's very much hypothetical.
Because you don't want to get fired from either of them.
No, well, the reality is, working in hockey is fantastic. Working in junior hockey is the furthest thing from lucrative. And I would not survive without my full-time job. And there is no way in HE double hockey sticks, anybody, even this multi-billion-dollar corporation, is going to pay me a full-time salary for traveling around to places like Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, and Windsor. It's just not going to happen.
Sometimes Maslow's hierarchies of needs, that competes with itself. It's like, yeah, I love the hockey, but it don't pay. That's a fair answer, too.
There you go.
Everything has the good and the bad. That's the thing with politicians. They don't talk about the trade-offs.
It's really, it's one of those things that because of the realities of the job, it would never possibly happen. But the question is like picking your favorite child or your favorite dog in your case.
That would be so easier. That would be so much easier because,
Bottom line is this. I need it all. I do. I like to be busy. I need to be busy. And I need the outlet on both sides.
Well, yeah, I imagine you get to yell a lot more on the radio, on the hockey coverage than you do here just because, with the excitement and the spontaneity. Here, it's just sort of like people like me are droning on and on and on.
There's an excitement of yelling, and then there's this show where we're yelling to make things better. We need it all. We need sports in our life. We need the opportunity to make things better in our lives.
We need bread and circuses.
We need bread and circuses. Fred, I hope I have now finally answered your question. Rant or Rave begins. I felt so bad about that all weekend. Brian, start us off. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Good. Brian, from a previous life, you and I used to work together as delivery guys a long time ago. Car 87 here at your service.
Car 25 right here, Brian. What's up, 87? I love it.
Anyway, Mike, I got something for you here. And there's going to be a lot more complications to this question, obviously. But with everybody talking about the tariffs, okay, there's not one company, there's not one politician, there's not one person in the media. Nobody has ever said anything about the pure greed of the companies out there. And what I mean by that is, for a quick example, this is a very small example, but still an example. I used to produce a board game a long time ago. It would cost me about $20 to produce it in Canada. To sell it, I would have to double that cost. So I would sell it for $40 as the MSRP. So my markup is 100%, okay? So when these tariffs come in, why is it every company, every single one, always says we have to pass it on to the consumer? I say no. I say if you wanted to actually really sell that product big time, you would say, you know what, we're going to suck up the tariff. We're still making a ludicrous amount of money. We're just not making as much as we used to. But imagine the volume of product that would probably go out the door just because they came out and actually said that.
Brian, it's an excellent question. Appreciate the call. It's great to hear from you, a former B&D delivery driver. Car 87, Car 25. David, let's mull this over as we take a quick break and come back with more Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. David Drewe remains in studio with us this afternoon. Interesting question posed by Brian earlier, David, when it comes to the tariffs. I mean, why aren't the mega corporations just sucking it up and making less? Heaven forbid they don't make $3 billion. They make $2.8 next year.
Well, I'm not sure how many of these mega corporations have a 100% markup on any of their products. Like, I don't know of anything in a grocery store that's 100% markup. Any essentials anyway, maybe in the perfume aisle. You look at a tier 3 auto manufacturer, they're not looking at anywhere near an 8% markup. Forget about a 100% markup. Like, the markups on most items are quite small, and it's the volume that you make your money on. It's not making money on a thing like that.
Not to mention a tier 3 automaker or in that supply chain somewhere is not making billions of dollars annually.
That, and also then that part crosses the border to another tier 4 or tier 2, and then it crosses the border again. And so all of a sudden the margins at this point we're talking about, because this is a add-on. There's no flow through like with the HST where I get the rebate, and, nothing like that. This just gets piled on top of. So there's some greedy people out there, but I just don't know that you can throw this in their direction.
All right, Brian, interesting thought. Thanks for getting the conversation started. Rant or Rave continues with Mark. Afternoon, Mark.
Afternoon, Mike. 11 goals to go, Mike.
11 goals to go.
You know what I'm talking about?
Don't think so. Austin Matthews?
Ovechkin.
Oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Why not?
Because I don't like him.
Mike?
What?
You suck.
You suck.
I thought I was the only person who talked like that potty mouth on the radio.
Imagine that, eh? That's my buddy Mark. Alex Ovechkin. Send him back to Putin. You can have him. Leave Wayne Gretzky's records alone. Do you have any care about that at all, David?
I'm hoping we can just get that soundbite of "You suck, Mike" for general usage later.
All right, I will save that because it will come in handy. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, my friends. How are you guys?
Fabulous.
That's good. I want to rant about the Zelensky Trump thing on the weekend last week, and I think it'd be good for David, if you don't mind, just to maybe get your opinion on this. I think that Trump here is not exactly. I think he's afraid of a couple of leaders in the world. I think one of them is Putin, for sure, because him and J.D. Vance would never, ever, ever speak to those two like that. And I think the other person is Netanyahu, because, again, I don't think he's going to talk like that. I think there's something more internal that is going on with the stress that's going on. I mean, when J.D. Vance said, "Did you say thank you for what we've done?" I don't remember the United States ever thanking Canada for the 20 years that we were with them during the war on terror and sent out military aircraft and personnel that got, God bless those ones that lost their lives to it. But the fact that he's talking to like this, it just shows that he cares more about Russia and China than he does the actual people of America and Ukraine and stuff. Like, he's saying that, he's starting a world war and stuff. I don't believe that. I think in my mind, like, I've heard that reiteration many times with the war on terror, the 1990s with the war of Yugoslavia. There's been so many iterations. Oh, we're going to hit a World War III. Oh, there's going to be weapons of mass destruction. What's your take on it? Do you think it's something more internal with Trump going on, or do you think that that's just how he is? Thanks a lot, my friend. Have a good day.
I think that Donald Trump is the Manchurian candidate. I think that he admires strength. So I agree with you on Putin. I'm not so sure about Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu would be one sentence away from offending Trump, at which point Trump would have no qualms about treating him the way he treated Zelensky. I think I've said it on the air before. I know I've said it to Mike. I'm afraid of Trump. I'm not afraid of us becoming the 51st state. I am afraid, though, of him just taking what he wants. And what do we have in common with Greenland and with with Ukraine? Critical minerals. He's talking about with Ukraine saying, "Hey, and if you give us critical minerals, that's how you can pay us back for the stuff we gave you. We gave it to you, and now this is how you can pay it back." With Greenland, he's making it clear that that is what he wants there. And there's talk that he and Russia are collaborating or planning to collaborate on critical mineral extraction in the Arctic. I'm very afraid of, and everybody, what cheeses me off the most, Mike, if I have a second, do we have time? I am so cheesed that everybody who's sitting there going, well, why isn't the world sticking up for us? Why isn't the King of England speaking out? Why didn't Keir Starmer speak out? Why would they? All we know that we have been the beggars at the table, not paying our dues at NATO, on the world front. Our peacekeeping reputation is a joke. We're just not there. So what is it that other people would be coming up to defend? Like, why? The world needs more Canada? Well, Canada as a promise, yes, but Canada as a debt, no. And the King of England especially. Well, first of all, the way the British monarchy works is we would have to formally ask him to get involved as our king. He can't just start getting involved. And how would it make us look if he did? You know, my daddy's going to come protect us. And just as a more joking aside, when's the last time the Americans were willing to take advice from the King of England? That generally does not end well.
David Drewe stays in studio with us today during Rant or Rave. Email from Dave to Mike at 570news.com. Mike, if you pass away tomorrow, your job will be posted before your obituary. So pick one. Radio announcer. Thanks for that, Dave. We continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. When I told David Drewe, who stays in studio with us today, that Mary was on the line, he got very excited. He loves talking to Mary, so the two of you have 90 seconds to... Uh-oh, Mary. Mary. Did you hear that, David? She's gone. All right, you get to rant instead. You said you had a...
Yeah.
Oh, wait. We got to get his microphone back.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I have a rant, and I'm not even sure who it's directed against. Is it...
Those are the best kind.
Is it the city of Kitchener? Or is it the idiot people parking? But with all the snow we've had, you have this crazy amount of snow that has just melted and drifted into the street, taking room off both sides. And on some streets, you can literally lose 6 or 7 feet of the width of the road. And then, you know, city, get on that. Get on that. I understand why they haven't been able to. It's been a crazy amount of snow in a short period of time. I get that. So I don't know if it's against them. But then you've got these people who are parking on both sides of the road. So you can't barely fit between these cars in normally, like you would have 2 cars passing each other with 2 cars parked next to each other. Now the space is so reduced, you can barely get 1 car between the parked cars.
You can't get 3 cars down my street anymore. If people parked on both sides, which they can't, the signs forbid it, but we would never fit.
But that's just it. So I don't know who to complain at, like who my rant is at. Is it at the city or is it at these people?
It's at the weather people. That's who it's at.
The weather gods?
The weather gods. They have faulted you again, my friend.
I blame Thor.
Thanks for sticking around. It's always fun.
Ooh, I got my rant, though. Can I hang around for another 15 to get that out?
I thought that was your rant.
Okay, yeah, that was my rant.
Okay, no, you can stick around, though. We got to get to news right now. And David Drew's taken over the last half hour of the show. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. David Drewe joins us on Monday mornings at 11:30, and sometimes, when schedules permit, he gets to stick around for the Talkback Hour. He is with us for Rant or Rave today as we get back to the phones for Bob. Afternoon, Bob.
Hey, Mikey, how you doing? You too, Drew. Good to hear you. This has been driving me nuts. If you were told by a judge, right, he gives you 3 commands: put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. Now, if you do that, you're legally sworn in, right? You have to tell the truth. If you refuse to put your left hand on the Bible and you only repeat after him and raise your right hand, are you legal? Have you legally sworn in that you have to tell the truth and go along with the Constitution?
I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I know that if there's certain people who are very Christian whose faith will not allow them to swear. So they will affirm rather than swear.
But they will put their hand on the Bible?
Nope.
What? Are you serious?
Why are you so concerned about this?
I'm just wondering because everything that he's doing right now is shock and awe and is against a whole lot of the rules of democracy.
Okay, you're talking about Donald Trump when he took the oath of office.
Oh, I thought he meant Trudeau.
No. I'm talking about Donald Trump, that idiot. He refused to put his hand on the Bible.
Did he? I don't remember that.
Yeah, he didn't do it. Okay. And I was yelling at the TV. So is he truly sworn in? And does he have to tell the truth?
Well,
so help me God.
That's when you get sworn into office, it's a little bit different than being sworn in as a witness in a court of law. So he doesn't have to tell the truth, frankly. That's the bottom line.
But you know what? We should really be looking at adding this to a lot of oaths.
There you go.
Stop lying.
Yeah. Oh, I like this. Bob, you're honest. You've solved the world's problems today, Bob.
Hey, man, if three of us get together, we can fix it.
Appreciate that. Did somebody not talk about this, David? Some sort of, or is it maybe one of those grassroots organizations that wants to change politics, but talk about a voters' bill of rights or something like that, where those elected are held to account for any fibs they tell? Wasn't there something about that? Did I dream it?
Well,
you're not buying this at all.
No,
right?
I can believe that such a group exists.
Okay.
I just
couldn't remember if it was a group like that or if there was actually somebody running that said, if I get elected, I will enshrine. I don't know.
Oh, that was Dalton McGuinty.
Well, yes and no. Trust me. I'm so mad about that still.
That wasn't a tax; it was a levy.
Yeah, no, a premium.
A premium.
Yeah, a premium. I got a premium idea for him.
We're paying premium for healthcare because it's premium quality.
Premium quality healthcare. Fred, you're on the Talkback Hour. Rant or rave?
Hey, Mike. A bit of a rave and a rant. The rave is thank you for going back to my question from last Tuesday. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thanks for giving me something to think about for a full week.
You were talking this morning about the speed cameras, and you were talking about the one area where it goes from 50 to 80 to 60 and all that kind of stuff. And it made me think back to about 10 years ago about a place called Waldo. And you might ask, where is Waldo?
Just out Highland Road.
Waldo is in Florida. And I was on my way down there to visit my parents about 10 years ago. And I was taking Interstate 75, and my GPS told me, hey, you can save for a few minutes if you take Highway 25. So I took Highway 25, going through this town of Waldo. And all of a sudden, the speed limits, kind of similar, goes from 50 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour to 50, and just keeps changing and changing and changing. And the one time I didn't change is the one time I got pulled over. And I found out afterwards that Waldo is notorious for catching speeders going to Florida. And they set up those speed traps on purpose. And they actually have more police that live in Waldo than they do actual other residents.
Come on, Fred. You're making stuff up now.
No, I'm not. And
right.
Eventually, they took the police department out of Waldo because they were so corrupt.
Wow.
And they even have a diner in the town of Waldo, and it's called the Speed Trap.
Okay. Fred, I appreciate the very interesting story. Policing is much different in the United States versus in Canada. There is a Waldo. Just go out Highland Road. I think it's in Wilmot Township. I don't think it's its own little jurisdiction, but there's a Waldo, WALDAU. Anyway, speed cameras are stupid. David, your thoughts?
I'm just remembering driving through the country and there being these speed limit decreases for no apparent reason at all. And you're just trying to figure out why. And you're thinking, well, probably 100 years ago, there was a reason for this. But now everybody's moved to, and it's just, but there's so much of that where you're just looking around and it's like, is there any reason for this other than a speed trap? Because there's any reason to slow down. You can't see any difference. There's no more houses. There's no school around. There's nothing. It's just farmland or nothing. And all of a sudden it's like, go from 90 to 50. And after you've driven through it a couple times, there's only a 1 kilometer stretch of 50. And the other guys have stop signs at the intersection. It's like, what's the point of this? And then as soon as you go through it too fast, the lights come on behind you.
Lobsinger Line is a bizarre place right now. 50 to 80 to 60 to 40. And just for good measure, a speed camera to boot. Tisk, 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 region of Waterloo. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are both of you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Super duper.
Good. With respect to the interaction between President Zelensky and President Trump, I think, in my view, it was a big miscalculation by Zelensky. I think you have to really read the room. I think we all have to actually come to the realization that we've entered into a new political paradigm that was really set in motion when Trump was first elected in 2016. I personally never went to the bank and borrowed $50,000 or $100,000 and gave it to strangers that are in need. And I think currently, right now, the U.S. is borrowing approximately $2 trillion a year, if I'm not mistaken, and their overall debt sits around $36 trillion. And what the American people voted for was for their political leaders to really decrease their spending on a lot of different things, but wars being chief amongst them. And so if you watch the entire 50-minute interview, Zelensky appears to have come into the interview with really what ought to be and how that could be achieved, while Trump, I think, takes the approach from the perspective of what is actually possible given the circumstances and his desire for peace. And, you know, a few days before that interview, both Macron and Steimer were interviewing with Trump, and they pushed back on some of Trump's statements. However, they didn't underwrite their differences in front of the cameras. And Zelensky's inability to kind of be the man of this new moment, I think, is problematic from my perspective.
Pat, appreciate the call and the thought-provoking idea here. I would just say, as a starting point, I don't think capitulation to Putin is a starting point if I'm Zelensky. I'll leave it there for now. We'll consider it more and come back after the break on the Mike Farwell Show. Rant or Rave continues, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. David Drewe stays in studio with us today for the Talkback Hour, Rant or Rave. David, I saw your face change, your expression changed when Pat referred to the interaction on Friday between Presidents Zelensky and Trump.
Interaction. Interaction, yeah. I've had many interactions in my life, fewer like that. I disagree totally with Pat. I don't know where to start. I can't picture being a country at war and walking in on that. And of course you're going to be defensive. Like, the lives of your citizens are on the line, and Russia doesn't really have a strong history of respecting ceasefires and treaties. So, yeah.
And Zelensky made that point when he was able to, but neither Vance nor Trump wanted to hear it.
When Zelensky almost got one sentence out and started his saga, and Trump's like, "He's spoken too much already." Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Like I say, it was a total wrestling promo that they were cutting, and that's just, I think they were disrespecting the White House with that behavior more than Zelensky was.
It's a really good point. Never seen anything like that before. We'll be talking about it more on the show tomorrow morning at 9:30 as well. Just if you want to join us for that, we'll have some expert perspective on it. A couple of mics on the line. Let's start with this Mike. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Mike. I'm going to agree with something that David Drewe said today. Canada has become the NATO freeloader and mooch, right? And we have not been living up to our end of the bargain as far as defense spending and stuff like that. And for someone like Trump, if he sees something like that, he is right now looking at the ways to cut his budget. He's $36 trillion in debt. And in a way, I sort of blame our Canadian government. They knew that Trump's election was a possibility, but they didn't act on anything. They just assumed that he would honor his treaty, which he won't. They just assumed that it would be business as normal. And the other thing, too, is I don't think this free trade stuff has worked out well for us if someone can just ignore the treaties and everything else.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from on that front, but I think generally speaking, NATO aside, I think you were talking about more than that, weren't you, David, when you talked about Canada kind of being that mooch? We have grown incredibly complacent because of the big brother to our south.
Oh, yeah. Yes. But our foreign aid, it's not what it was. Our peacekeeping is not what it was. we are living off our post-World War II history and pretending like that's our present.
Exactly.
And we have been doing that for so long. And now we are sitting here wondering, well, where is everybody? Where are all our friends? And it's like, our friends are already tired of picking up the tab. And they have their own concerns with Donald Trump right now. Like, he's not just aiming at us.
They certainly do. All right, let's get to the next Mike. Good afternoon, Mike.
Mikey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Good. Listen, a nice little rave here, a nice little road trip, Mikey. And how about that goal? 5.7 seconds left. You're in your own end. What a sweet goal that was, Mike. Excellent road trip. I'll talk to you soon, Mike. Go Leafs, go, bud.
All right, Mike, thanks for the call. Good to hear from you. He's very excited by the buzzer beater that the Leafs scored on Sunday versus Pittsburgh. That's just a good thing they hung on to win the game. Are you excited yet about hockey, David, in any way?
Honestly, no.
No.
I loved it for the trash talk when I was in my bar going out days.
Sure.
Because, I'm a Sens fan. So you can never, ever see Sens games in Southern Ontario. So it doesn't matter that my team is a loser. I can sit there and mock everybody else's teams when they were losing, but I don't really go out anymore, and so I don't have cable at home, so I'm a loser.
You're not perfect. Mikey, go Leafs, go. 5 in a row, baby. 5 in a row. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Rant or Rave on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Final minutes of our Talkback Hour today before we turn things over to Rob Snow. And now you know, David Drewe in studio with us as well. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. I just wanted to respond briefly to your first caller there, saying that industries are making 100 points. I've been in the auto industry since I left high school back in the 80s. I don't know of a single company, not one, that makes 50 points, let alone 100. In fact, 25 is probably pushing it.
Do most car manufacturers not lose money on their entry-level models? Like a Honda Civic does not make them money, is my understanding. They just want you to get you in on the brand.
Well, all the suppliers I know are hovering between 10 and 15 points at the high. You will take five points on a multi-million part order, because you'll still make a little bit of money and keep the machine running. But all it takes is a handful of suppliers to stop shipping, assuming that the tier ones push back to the other suppliers and say, no, you're going to eat that tariff at 25 points. No, I'm not. I'm not shipping. If a handful of companies do that, the whole industry shuts down. Mark my words. If that happens, it'll be 2 weeks and the whole auto industry will shut down. It'll be absolute crap show.
All right, there you go.
That sounded cynical. However, over the weekend, I was hearing, I can't remember the name of the expert in the auto industry, but he was saying 1 week.
2 weeks? 1 week?
1 week of these tariffs and all of these results that I forget the caller's name was just like, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. But yeah. That happens, and it's a week is what I heard on the weekend. He was being generous with 2 weeks.
Tomorrow is Tariff Tuesday. Grant, last word to you.
Yeah, two quick things. Thank you, Topher J, for announcing the at-home voting, and that thing on 60 Minutes about throwing people off the plane so that they disappear. What's your thoughts, Mr. Drewe?
All right. You know what?
I'm sorry, throwing people off the plane?
So they disappear. It sounds like a conspiracy. You know what's funny is last night at home, I heard the tick, 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 tick of 60 Minutes as I was sitting preparing for my late night work shift, and my beloved was watching 60 Minutes, and I meant to say, give me the Coles notes so I'm ready for Grant tomorrow. I missed 60 Minutes last night.
I don't know if throwing people off a plane is a good way to make them disappear. It really depends on where they're landing.
Or if they have a parachute or not.
Well, there's that part. But, you drop them in the middle of downtown Toronto, it's not really sneaky.
Good point. All right. We've got 60 seconds left. I know you had a rant. Can you make it happen in 60 seconds?
I already gave it to you, remember?
Wait a minute. We literally finished that, and then you said you needed to do a rant.
And then you said, you just gave me a rant. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I have another rant. You're not paying attention, Mike.
No,
You're not paying attention.
I kid you not.
Here I am giving you my very, very valuable time.
You finish your rant about people parking on the street when streets are so narrow because of the snowbanks. And then we finish and you say, I still want to do my rant. I'm like, I thought you just did.
And then I said, yes, I did. But also, that wasn't even my rant. I wasn't sure whether I was grouchy at the parking people or the city not plowing people. See, Mike,
David,
you should give your listeners a little bit more respect sometimes.
I should. You're right. And my guests who stay well beyond their allotted time. And I pay
only... we're out there welcome like no belief.
I pay only in gratitude if this is gratitude. All right, I'm going to go. He's going to go. We're all going to go. And we'll come back tomorrow at 9. Is that a deal? Colin Robertson is our guy on the other side of the glass. Now you know with Rob Snow coming up. My name is Mike Farwell. He's David Drewe. Bye for now.